Well, hello, it is me, Ryan B. And listen, we're here to have the conversation that has the community divided. Are you a Spuffy girly or a Bangel girly? Well, listen, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about who's better for Buffy, Angel, or Spike. And we're going to see who comes out on top. So let's get into it. Welcome in, but I regret to inform you, it was all a lie. It was a trick. It was a fallacy. We are not here to talk about who's better for Buffy, Angel, or Spike because I've been watching Buffy since it first aired in 97, and I'm thoroughly team cookie dough. I don't stand either one of these. So we're going to talk about why Spike and Angel shouldn't even be compared because they both represent two very different parts of Buffy's romantic journey as a young woman. So let's start off with the similarities and the things I know you guys are going to say because I know how you guys are. So let's start off with number one, both very hot, both come from the Master's House of Vampires. He was their grandsire, well, Spike's great grandsire or great great grandsire, but you know what I mean. Embattled vampires. Also, both have souls because we know with Spike and Angels, the soul wars really matter. We're going to get into that too, how that's very different for both of them, but how it doesn't justify or make excuses for the shenanigans with Angel and Spike. Also, both creepy stalkers stalk Buffy. Can't forget about that. Both centuries older than Buffy. Different times, I know. But listen, where was Chris Hansen in 97 to catch predators? Because he clearly wasn't catching predators at that point because Angel, you too, Spike. He waited until she was a little bit older, but still to catch a predator vibe. So to get the groomer and the creeper vibes out of the way, let's talk about it. Both Angel and Spike started off their obsessions and love stories with Buffy with watching her from a distance. Angel when she was underage, Spike when she was slightly above age. Actually, no. When he started stalking her, Buffy was underage too. So they're both on the same level. They see each other. They both started to stalk Buffy at a very young age. And I think this really says something about our society's obsession with purity politics. Before we move past the creepy part of the conversation and get into the ins and outs of these romances and obsessions, let's talk about vampires, especially on Buffy, and our society's fascination with purity politics and older men possessing the virginity and the youth of younger women. Well, really, that kind of says it all. A lot of times with vampires, we see these stories a lot. Interview with the Vampire, Buffy, Twilight, The Vampire Diaries, where we can use vampires to do things that would very much get you put in prison if you did that with a real minor. But since you're centuries old, it doesn't seem to be as bad, right? Right. But it's true. Our society does have a fascination with the purity of young women and older men possessing that and being a teacher and just being the first man to possess that woman's virginity. And we see a lot of that run rampant in vampires because, like I said before, when the person is 5 centuries old, it doesn't seem to be as bad as when they're 10 years older. So, being hot, creepy stalkers, something both Spike and Angel have in common. So, we can get that out of the way. So, let's get into Angel and Buffy. This one is billed as one of the greatest love stories, arguably the greatest love story on Buffy. And I'm not here to argue that. I'll just say this. After Angel laid eyes on a 15-year-old Buffy, he said, okay, this is it. This is the one. This is the reason for me to get my life together. And this fascination with her, this call of duty, this call to action was a source and a reason for him to get his life together and get himself ready to be a warrior and be all that he needs to be to support Buffy. None of this really had anything to do with Buffy other than the fact that she was a Slayer and she was coming into a great calling herself. But being centuries older than Buffy, he definitely had a lot of years and experience and wisdom on Buffy. I will say that Buffy and Angel had a mutual love for each other, and obviously Buffy would because when she met him, she was really young and he was very attractive, he was mysterious, and he also understood a part of her life that not a lot of people did. So for Buffy, it totally made sense to me why Buffy would fall in love with Angel because, like, let's look at the material. Let's be honest. Especially as a 15, 16-year-old, we have to be real. On Angel's part, however, I would say the choice to be with Buffy was both flawed and selfish because the loss of his soul, the age, all of it, all the implications it had on Buffy were very traumatic. And just caused Buffy a lot of stress that she probably shouldn't have had to go through at such a young age. And then, not to mention the trauma around losing her virginity and the sexual trauma that went into that as well. And then him turning on her and unaliving her friends and all of it. All of it was very ill advised, very dramatic, very cinematic, all of those things. But again, we're talking centuries of experience to a 16-year-old, and it put Buffy through a lot. But this seems to be the recurrent with Buffy when it comes to dating, especially with her vampire romances. She goes through a lot of things that she wouldn't have to go through if she was with someone who, say, wasn't a vampire. But then we have the Riley Finns of the world, which we'll cover in a different video because that's a whole nother video in itself. So when she loses her virginity on her birthday, Angel loses his soul. He abruptly flips. And sidebar, I did a live on my TikTok about this storyline, and I was amazed how many women told me in the comments that they had this exact same experience where a guy just flipped on them after them sleeping together the first time. I was just blown away. And when I looked back at it, I remember I had a best friend in high school who had dated a guy for, I want to say, like a whole year, and then they slept together and he abruptly changed and became mean. So when I saw those comments, it flashed me back, and I was just like, yeah, this was such a really well done allegory for something that so many women experience in the real world. And but that's also the story of Buffy. It's what they do so well. But getting back to it, he instantly flips. He starts to terrorize her. He's still obsessed with her. He unalives Jenny Calendar. Rest in peace, girl, gone too soon. And there was a ton of guilt that Buffy dealt with because this is how she lost her virginity. And she had so much responsibility to her friends and having to manage the loss, but also having to manage the fact that it was the person that she loved and allowed into her friends' lives that was causing all of this dismay. And then there was the trauma of having to actually end his life, having to push him into a portal or sacrifice him, a person she was still in love with despite all of these awful things. This is a lot. Like, imagine this. You're 16. Well, at this point, you're like 17 years old. She was in high school. This was a lot. When Angel comes back, though it wasn't well advised for Buffy to get back with him, and most people judged her for it, as usual, Buffy went with her heart. She leads with her heart. And she's a very secure attachment type. When she likes someone or cares for someone, she's generally in it and she will do anything for the person. And I think the relationship with Angel was the inception of her learning how to be in the fire with the person. But her getting back with him allowed her to actually get closure around having to end his life, and also all of the things that happened when she had lost her virginity. And she also never had to have the what if me and Angel had worked out? What if me and Angel had a second chance? Because she actually did it and she actually saw it through. And I will say, to Angel's credit, he, along with Joyce, shout out to Joyce, RIP as well, gone too soon as well, had a conversation and were honest with themselves about the fact that Angel could never give Buffy the life she deserved. And despite all of the awful things, I think this is one of the biggest redemptions for Angel and the Angel-Buffy relationship, that he saw that it was better for him to leave and to step out of her life. And instead of staying and clinging and being with her any way he could, he made a decision to give her a better life. And there's a lot of love in that. So messy, inappropriate, even illegal had he not been a vampire. All these things are true about the Buffy and Angel romance, but it is very much a tragic love story nonetheless. A tragic love story of two people that could just never be. Now, let's get into Spike. I'm not going to lie. Spike is one of my favorite characters in the show, though I don't ship him with Buffy whatsoever, or I wouldn't ship him with any of my girlfriends, to be honest. But I have to say, dynamic character, great development, love this character. I wouldn't characterize Buffy and Spike as a romance at all or a love story at all. I would call it more of a trauma bond, a story of camaraderie that turns into a trauma bond. When we meet Spike, he's in town to kill her. He's in town to kill Buffy because that's what he does. He likes to take out slayers. And Spike has an obsession with possessing women that he's fascinated with. And we see that the inception of that is in an Oedipus complex with his mom. And I think that really ramps up when he's sired by the powerful seductress, enchantress, vampiress. Is that right? Vampiress? Yeah, vampiress, Drusilla. Also, shout out to Drusilla. When she sires him, all of those obsession qualities that he had before that we saw, like with Cecily when he was human, and with his mother, transfers into his vampire form. And we see his obsession with taking out slayers such as in Wrong and my girl Nikki Wood. And also obsessed with Drusilla. This is a thing with Spike. So when he comes to town, he watches Buffy, he wants to take her out, and then he instantly becomes captivated with her presence, her resourcefulness, her fighting style, her connections to her friends. And over time, it became a cat and a mouse, but it also became more of a possession or an obsession with Buffy that grew over time. Then that obsession became romantic feelings, and then Spike trying to convince Buffy that she had romantic feelings as well. And Buffy, for the greater part of 2 seasons, would tell Spike repeatedly, I'm not interested in you that way. I don't feel that way for you. It would never be you. All of these things, but Spike was determined because he was obsessed, as Spike tends to be. And he continued to stalk and coerce and try to convince Buffy that she wanted him in ways that she was very clear and deliberate about telling him that she didn't. Until Buffy started to go through some really rough hardships in life, losing her mom, having to take care of Dawn, then losing her life and then coming back to life and then readjusting to life again in adulthood and paying bills, and her best friends bringing her back into the world but making her pay bills and being grown people and not helping her pay the bills. And for some reason, being a slayer meant that you have to pay the bills while these grown people live in your house rent free. Okay, that's off topic, but I'm just saying there was a lot going on down at the Summers house that should not have been going on. Justice for Buffy in season 6. It was in that time period where Buffy was at her worst that Spike had an opening. In the darkness, when she was isolated from her friends, he took that moment to further isolate her and tell her that she's wrong and that she craves darkness, and all of these narratives that Spike would create about Buffy and project onto her, that she likes a monster in her man. Which, when you really look at Buffy's dating history, Buffy's been out here trying to date everybody. The humans don't really give her a fair shot. Like, the way Parker played her, she was into it, and the way he played her, Riley Finn. Listen, but that's a different video. It's a different video. Let's keep it rolling. Buffy eventually folds, and she relents, and she falls into Spike physically. And for me, it's clear as a viewer, but it's also explicitly clear because she said it. She was never in love with Spike, and I wouldn't call this a love story because there was never a point where they were both mutually in love with each other, or honestly, I don't think there was a point where either were truly in love with each other. Maybe Spike, but for the most case, I maintain that with Spike, it's hard to know the difference between his love and his obsession. And the two are so convoluted and so mixed, it's hard to know with Spike. And Buffy was never in love with Spike. They end up going back and forth, and they're very much physically intertwined with each other. And Spike is isolating her from her friends, and because his best chance with her is in the darkness and convincing her that she is different and she is alone and she is wrong, and basically feeding her all of her darkest thoughts in order to possess her, which is what he wants. And that goes on for a while until Buffy, just like most stages of grief, starts to work through it, and she starts to come back into herself and realize that she can pull herself out of the darkness, but she has to undo some of these bad choices that she's making. We get really down on Buffy about season 6, about her making bad choices and about her being with Spike and about some reckless things. But I have to say, considering the amount of traumas that Buffy had experienced, I think Buffy was too hard on herself. And I think we, the viewers, can be too hard on Buffy because as a person who's been through severe loss and severe grief, I know how that can lead you to do really destructive things. And let's just give our girl some time to process. And I just think Buffy beat herself up a little too heavily about that because, listen, there's a lot of ways to cope in the world. And if you got a hot, sexy vampire man who you can sneak off to a cute crypt with, I'm just saying, there are worse ways to do it. There are worse ways to do it. So, Buffy, you better live. Like you say, seize the day because tomorrow. But she cut things off with Spike. She let him know that she can no longer do it. I'm not going to be able to do it anymore, Spike. I'm not going to be able to do it. She put on her cute little frilly purple top to let him know, because you know when Buffy starts dressing up again, she's back in baddie mode and she means business. So she told him. From that point on, Spike still continued to stalk around and try to convince Buffy that she still wants him. And then let's get to the bathroom scene that I know you guys want to talk about. He tries to force himself on Buffy. I'm just going to say that for YouTube reasons. He tries to force himself, doesn't try. He forces himself on Buffy and just really, really, really was vile. Was really vile. And I get the whole like violence was a part of their relationship, but it was clear that in that bathroom, Buffy said no. She was not interested. She didn't want to do it. And he physically forced himself onto her. And she had to physically try to fight him off of her. It was what it was. It was disgusting. It was vile. If this happened to you, your sister, your friend, would you be able to forgive the guy that did it, regardless if he got a soul? And we're going to get to the soul in a second. We're getting there. But listen, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to like and subscribe. And yeah, because I'm on a journey. I'm trying to get to 100 subs. Maybe by the time you're watching this, I'm trying to get to 500 or 1,000 subs. Whatever it is, just go ahead and hit the subscribe, because listen, we're in this together. I can't really be out here talking about all this Buffy and all of this fandom stuff into the void by myself. So go ahead and hit the like and subscribe. Also follow me on TikTok and Instagram, RyanBTalkstv, on all of that stuff. But yeah, let's get back to the conversation at hand. So then Spike, realizing what he's done, decides that he wants to step back into himself, go on a voyage, go eat, pray, love, or do whatever to get back to himself, empower himself, which is great. I love that for Spike, because there's so many girls who are like, but he got a soul, but he got a soul. The thing is about that, I don't like the messaging that Spike needed to traumatize Buffy in that way, or could use traumatizing Buffy in that way as a catalyst for his development. Because, unpopular opinion, he could have done this. He could have had this eat, pray, love moment without traumatizing Buffy, but he ended up getting a soul in the exchange and comes back a allegedly new man, which Spike's soul and desouled versions are not as different as Angel and Angela's, but came back a different man nonetheless. And still, I maintain that's not enough for me. I still enjoy Spike as a character, but after the bathroom scene, it was a chop, it was a dub, it was a finito for me. And I'd like to know in the comments, let me know, how do you guys justify that moment? The whole like, but he got a soul. If you were seeing a guy, or someone in your family was seeing a guy, and they did something like that, and they went on to a journey, a self-empowerment, and came back. We can't do the soul analogy in real life because that's not how souls work in the real world. But would you feel it's justifiable for your friend or yourself to get back with this person after they had done that to you? I'm really interested, because for me, that one was pretty extreme. He comes back with the soul, and Buffy and Spike don't get back together, but they do remain fierce comrades. They do have each other's back. They pull each other out of dark moments. They really align for each other, or allied for each other, when other people are not. There's sometimes empty places, to say one specifically, where Spike was Buffy's greatest ally, where her friends, the Scooby, should have been, and they absolutely were not and completely failed. But we'll talk about that in a different video. And for that season, for season 7, he was a great ally. I will say there were some periods where Buffy and her codependency with Spike did cause some extreme blind spots in her judgment, and also just blind spots to the fact that her friends didn't feel safe around Spike and didn't trust her judgment. And she wasn't seeing this because she was so engaged and so caught up in the situation with Spike and everything else going on too, the looming war. But in the end, Spike gave his life to save the world, and he was even able to hear "I love you" from Buffy. But even as Spike admitted, he knew it wasn't true, because Buffy didn't love Spike. She never did. She had love for him, but she was never in love with him. And that's why I could never say that Buffy and Spike was a love story, because it wasn't. It was a story of obsession, possession, and trauma bonding, and camaraderie. So very different than Angel. Angel and Buffy was a love story that sometimes was touching, a lot of times very dramatic, very traumatic. A story of two people that should never and could never be together, but were trying to be together. And we could see through the storylines and against everybody's better judgment, including Angel knowing better, why these two people shouldn't be together. But of course, in matters of love, you don't always do the thing you're supposed to do. Sometimes you try it. Sometimes you really try it, and you end up trying yourself. And that's what happened with Buffy and Angel. But in its best, it was a great love story. And at its worst, man, that was some good TV. Season 2, passion, innocence, becoming 1 and 2. That's when Buffy started to find its cinematic footing, its arc building. What a time to be alive, guys. Watching that in real time, what a time to be alive. And Spike and Buffy, just great chemistry. I say it all the time. Spike is a character that has chemistry with so many different characters. Xander, Anya, Andrew, Giles, you name it, Spike has great chemistry with, but Buffy and Spike really have a strong bond and understanding of each other, and a lot of passion, a lot of trauma, a lot of obsession, a lot of possession, a lot of toxicity. Though you guys are welcome to ship whoever you want to ship, I would definitely say it's not in a place to be compared to Angel and Buffy, which I think was legitimately a love story. Both should have went to jail, Spike and Angel. Both should be in jail. So there you go, guys. I'm still Team Cookie Dough, but this is why you should not compare Buffy and Spike and Buffy and Angel. Two very different scenarios. And also for the girlies who are like, where's the Riley talking points? I'm gonna do a whole separate video about Riley because that's a whole thing in itself, and we're gonna get into that. Go in the comments and let me know, what do you think? Are you, first of all, are you Team Bangel, Team Spuffy? And what are your thoughts about the comparisons of the two? Should they be compared? Because listen, for better or worse, the romances with Angel and Spike were captivating and at the best, some of the best romances and sneaky links or whatever in TV history. And what a time for a girl who was like ages 16 through 22. What a life Buffy lived. And until the next one, don't forget, seize the day because tomorrow you might be